J.D. Vance's tie-breaking vote in the Senate sends the one big, beautiful bill back to the House of Representatives.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being evenly divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative. The bill as amended is passed.
Yeah, and then right before the applause starts, C-SPAN cuts to that weird ocean-sounding noise so that you can't hear that anyone in the Senate chamber is actually excited for the one big beautiful bill to pass. There were 3 votes that went against the bill on the Republican side. Rand Paul, no shock there. Tom Tillis, also no shock there. And Susan Collins from Maine. We shouldn't be overly shocked about her vote, but I know a lot of people in Maine are scratching their heads. A lot of people around the country are scratching their heads as well. But the bill passed, and President Donald Trump found out about it while he was on a tour of Alligator Alcatraz in the Florida Everglades. He just toured the facility with Kristi Noem and with Ron DeSantis, and he was sitting down to a round table to talk about ICE and take questions from the media when somebody announced, "Mr. President, the one big beautiful bill has passed the Senate."
Oh, thank you. Wow. Thank you. I'm waiting, listening to these wonderful words, and they are music to my ears, but I was also wondering how we're doing, because I know this is prime time. It shows that I care about you, because I'm here and I probably should be there, but we do care. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I care. I should probably be there, but you know what? I'm here at Alligator Alcatraz, and he had a really great time, and he said a lot of wonderful things. But back in Washington, D.C., he had his entire team ready to go to hit the ground running to take the win in the Senate and make sure that it included or that it equaled a win in the House of Representatives. Because remember, President Donald Trump put a deadline on this bill of July 4th, which is, checks watch, 2 days from now. And the Senate and the House of Representatives don't like to work over holidays, July 4th especially. So while the House is being called back into session today, while Mike Johnson is trying to rally all the members of the House of Representatives so they can begin the motions and start making the votes and put in forth the process to ratify the Senate bill, the Senate version of the one big beautiful bill, to get to the president's desk so he can sign it before July 4th, Donald Trump has got, pardon me, everybody on the ground and everybody on television trying to remind the House of Representatives why it's so important. And of course, one of our favorite and one of the most intelligent people, and one of the people who is not just an architect of some of the economic policy of the one big beautiful bill, but someone who explains it better than anybody, is Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council, who went on the internet who went on television and also the internet to talk about why this is a win that we must have, and why anyone telling you it's not a win is just plain wrong.
How are you sure that this one will not do what the Congressional Budget Office says it's going to do?
Well, the CBO's record is sort of 0 for a million, right? And so if we've got a person who's been playing in the major leagues and has never got a hit, then you should pretty much count on the fact that they're not going to have a hit again. The bottom line is that if this bill doesn't pass the House, then the one thing we know for sure is that the deficit's going to explode. We're going to have a recession, and revenues are going to go way down, and government spending is going to go way up because of all the welfare and everything that has to go up in a recession. And so if you don't pass this bill, for sure you're going to have a massive increase in the deficit. If you do pass the bill, then what's going to happen is you're going to get all the spending cuts. The biggest spending cut bill in history is the thing that just passed the Senate. And then you're going to have the growth from all of the tax cuts. And so the growth from the tax cuts by the Council of Economic Advisors estimate is going to raise $4 trillion in revenue over the next 10 years, more than what the CBO says. That $4 trillion is more than enough to pay for the bill. And then the other thing is to remember is that President Trump is not done. That in this bill, we're allowed to modify taxes, look for waste, fraud, and abuse in entitlements, but we're not allowed to touch discretionary spending. But discretionary spending is a 100% target of President Trump from the beginning, with the DOGE cuts and Rust vote and OMB. We estimate that we've got a lot more of rescission of spending to do for the rest of the year. And I think right now the OMB's estimate is that we're going to cut discretionary spending just in 1 year alone by $160 billion. Multiply that by 10. And again, you're getting the kind of deficit reduction that people need to see, because of the runaway spending of Biden is something that we absolutely 100% have to address.
And that is one of the reasons why you have so many objections to this bill. That's why one of the reasons why you have so many objections to the bill on both sides of the aisle. You have objections to people saying you're spending way too much money, and then you have objections by people who are saying you're cutting too many programs. So they don't want to spend any more money, and they also want to continue to spend the money that they have, while everybody in Donald Trump's administration is saying, look, we have to spend some money to put in place new programs that will protect America, that will keep America safe, that will offset some of these costs. But the economic growth we're going to have, along with the mandatory spending cuts that we're putting in this one big beautiful bill, will offset it, and the deficit will come down. And speaking of Russ Vought, that's exactly what he said.
And the fiscal watchdogs on the outside are playing artificial games with the baselines. They're choosing to not assume current tax relief that is in law. Now, the Senate goes further than the House did in providing additional tax relief. One of the things they do is to provide more certainty to businesses by having the business tax cuts extended for a longer period of time. But that doesn't reduce all of the fact that they have $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings in the bill that more than pays for the additional tax relief that is provided and any spending in the bill. So this is a net deficit reduction in this bill, and it's something that is fiscally responsible. $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. Again, the biggest thing we've ever seen is $800 billion in 1997, and this doubles that in this one bill. It is a historic bill. It has all of the things that the president ran on. We need to get it to the president's desk.
And that is something else that I think is very unique that a lot of people don't say. Donald Trump comes at this with a different, unique perspective, the businessman's perspective. It's something he did in his first term very successfully. It's something he's looking to do in this term very successfully. And he's making sure that he's looking at the flow chart of the United States of America. There's income coming in, and then there's expenditures. You know, you've got your profit loss sheet, your P&L, and Donald Trump is making sure that the profit side is always bigger than the loss side. There will be losses, there will be investment. You can't make money without spending money, but at the same time, you've got to make sure that you're making more money than you're spending. And that is something that Donald Trump has been proposing ever since he hit the campaign trail again, and it's something that the One Big Beautiful Bill does. Mike Faulkner, the Deputy Treasury Secretary, was also out saying, look, this is a better deal and allows for better investments by people. It's going to put more money in Americans' pockets, which is going to have them invest more money in the economy, which is going to grow the economy. It can't help but be a winning concept for America's future.
And the fiscal watchdogs on the outside are playing artificial games with the baseline.
I'm still to this day shocked that the economists over at the Fed refuse to admit that the tax and spending and deregulatory agenda that we had in the 2017 to 2019 timeframe that we are implementing again during the second term of the Trump administration generated incredible success. We had huge job gains, we had huge wage gains, we had great economic growth, and we had low inflation. And so what we're doing is going back to a proven strategy. If you create incentives for American people to invest in our nation by putting capital to work, by staying in the labor force, by having workers and companies focus on their actual activities of providing goods and services to the American people rather than engaging in regulatory compliance, you can better serve the American people's needs without inflation.
Right,
and so as we implement this bill, as we get our trade deals underway, as we allow people and businesses to make their own decisions, we will, in a non-inflationary way, bring prosperity to the American people. We did it before, and we're going to again.
That is something that Donald Trump is dead set on. He's not looking to spend. He's looking to save the economy. You can't save the economy with runaway spending, and that's something that's very difficult for career politicians to understand, I believe. It's very difficult for career politicians to look at something like what President Donald Trump is doing and seeing both sides of the aisle. Rand Paul, for example, is a friend of ours. We've had him on the show several times. He's a pretty good guy, pretty decent senator. And, we love Kentucky. But at the same time, Rand Paul is a dead set fiscal hawk who will look at any spending bill as one thing, and that is a spending bill. And he will decry it till the day he dies. And that's his thing. That's fine. That's what he's lived for. And in an older in pre-Trump America, when George Bush was president, Barack Obama was president, especially when Joe Biden was president, spending bills came and went, and they gave the American people nothing. The Democrats over and over again would force votes on continuing resolutions, and they would force votes on keeping the government open. So we would raise the debt ceiling by trillions of dollars, and we got absolutely nothing in return except the promise to keep the government open, when the government was basically the reason why we were in debt in the first place. Donald Trump is coming along saying, okay, we're going to get a debt ceiling increase, but we're going to make some massive changes to the way this place is run. We're going to cut a bunch of spending. We're going to increase programs that are helpful. We're going to we're going to make sure these tax breaks are codified for good. This is not your regular old debt ceiling increase with nothing in it for the American people. This is spending that you need to make. It's like buying Bitcoin. You buy it today, you're going to spend some money, but down the road, you're going to be a bazillionaire. And I don't own Bitcoin, so I'm going on the ideas and these stories that I've heard from the Bitcoin millionaires who are not me. And President Donald Trump said, look, we got it through the Senate. Now we got to get it through the House. July 4th is the deadline. And that's something that if the House works round the clock today and round the clock tomorrow, and maybe even on Friday morning, they could get it all done and be home in time for hot dogs and fireworks. I don't put a lot of stock in the House of Representatives to do that. But Donald Trump said, I thought it would be harder in the Senate. And look what happened.
I felt the Senate was going to be tougher than the House. We got there. We got pretty much what we wanted. It's an amazing package. It's the biggest bill ever passed if we get this done. Most of the people wanted 7 or 8 different bills. And I thought that was tougher because it'd be 100%, but then there'd be nothing. This bill has something for everybody by doing it this way. So we're happy about it. We're happy with the result.
Yeah, Donald Trump is happy with the result, and he's right. There was some give and take in the Senate, and one of the gives and one of the takes was when it came to Medicaid for illegal immigrants. Donald Trump wanted it out. Hardline fiscal conservatives wanted it out. A lot of American people wanted it out. You know who didn't want it out? The Democrats and the illegal aliens. And they went back and forth in the Senate, and at the end of the day, there was some give on the amount of money that was cut from Medicaid for illegal aliens, especially thanks to some, I would say, some people would say RINO. You might call them, middle of the road Republicans. You might call them moderate Republicans. I would just call them Democrats like Lisa Murkowski, as Susan Collins, and a handful of others who voted with the Democrats to allow illegals to continue to receive Medicaid. And President Donald Trump said, look, that's not exactly what we wanted, but we got most of what we wanted. And we are willing to compromise a little bit to get it done in time.
And just to be clear on the Medicaid cuts, you've promised not to cut Medicaid, said this is all just targeting waste, fraud, and abuse. Are you saying that the estimated 11.8 million people who could lose their health coverage, that is all waste, fraud, and abuse?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's going to be a very much smaller number than that, and that number will be waste, fraud, and abuse. And if you look, they took a much more liberal stance on the Medicaid situation than they could have. They had a tough stance and a weak stance. They took not a very strong stance on that to start off, and it's waste, fraud, and abuse, and everybody wants that covered.
What number is that? What analysis are you seeing?
I'm not seeing a number, but I know it's much less than the number you gave. And we really were very, very cognizant of 3 things. Social Security, we're going to take care of it beautifully. Medicare and Medicaid. And we are going to save it, whereas the Democrats are going to, you won't have it. They will destroy Medicare and Medicaid, and they have to because their numbers don't work. So it's not going to happen. They're the ones that have destroyed Medicare. They have made it so bad already, they're going to make it a lot worse. But now we'll be in charge, so we're going to have no problem with Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. Thank you.
And that is something that Donald Trump is adamant about, as well as border security, which this bill, and here's the big thing about this bill, the one big beautiful bill, it does a lot of things. It does a lot of things. In fact, there was a list that the White House put out. It delivers the largest tax cut in history for middle and working class Americans, bigger paychecks of $10,000 or more, and annual take-home pay for families, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, no tax on Made in America auto loans, protects 2 million family farms, permanent increases to child tax credit. A vote against the bill is a vote for largest tax increase in history, rescinds billions in green new scam funding, restores fiscal sanity, eliminates waste, fraud, and abuse on federal programs, permanently secures our borders, deports at least 1 million illegal aliens a year, on and on and on. So it's not just a fiscally responsible and important bill. It's not just a tax bill. It is a border security bill. It's a national security bill. It also funds the Golden Dome, which will protect America from any and all missile attacks. And even though Donald Trump is making this a much safer world to live in, there's always the threat of missile attacks because we are the United States of America. And even though they smile at us and shake our hands in public, they're all conniving and trying to figure out how to stab us in the back in private. So that's something that's really important. But it is really something that President Donald Trump has said, something that Donald Trump has done with the border security is the number one issue still for Americans, I think even hotter than the economy. And that is why Alligator Alcatraz is so important. And Donald Trump, he said some things for example, I didn't realize how expensive it was per illegal alien, but he said that one of the reasons why we need the money to deport these people is because that's going to save us money in the long run.
In total, the average illegal alien costs American taxpayers an estimated $70,000. That's each. $70,000. I think that number is even low. If you care about balancing the budget, the single most impactful step we can take is to fully reverse the Biden migration invasion. One of the worst invasions we've ever had. We've never had an invasion like this. We've had invasions, but we've taken care of them. We've never had an invasion like this. And it's with us. And we have some very bad people out there looking to do big harm. That's why the One Big Beautiful Bill includes funding for 3,000 new Border Patrol officers and 10,000 new ICE agents. And I've gotten to know the Border Patrol and ICE very well.
And they're doing a bang-up job. And one of the places they're doing such a great job is in Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis took the powers granted him by an executive order President Donald Trump signed on day one, giving states the authority to deputize individuals. This is incredible. Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis now have, or rather the governors in states, red and blue, have the ability and the authority to deputize anyone they want, whether it's an ICE agent or a police officer or National Guardsman is the latest. They can deputize them to be immigration judges. And that way you don't have to wait for months and months and months for an immigration hearing. The ICE agents at these facilities, including Alligator Alcatraz, can now become judicial, I guess you would say, decision makers when it comes to the immigration court. So if you're a National Guardsman and you're acting as a sentry at Alligator Alcatraz, you can be deputized as a judge and you can make that final ruling as to whether or not this person should be deported. And that's something that Ron DeSantis has done brilliantly. He also took money from New York, from FEMA in New York, that was being spent on all those luxury hotels, and he diverted it to Florida so that he could build Alligator Alcatraz out there in the Everglades so that they had a very safe and secure environment for these illegal ICE detainees to be held until they're processed and either deported or released with natural barriers like, bloodthirsty saber-toothed alligators and deadly pythons and mosquitoes and tsetse flies and water moccasins, and really just the vastness of the Florida Everglades itself, which is impervious to, human foot traffic. There's one way in and one way out, and it's both on a plane. You come in on a plane and you leave on a plane, and the plane you're leaving on is probably taking you back to the country you came from. And Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis have done that. And Ron DeSantis got a lot of praise from President Donald Trump yesterday.
And on January 20th, I signed an executive order empowering governors and state police to be deputized to enforce federal immigration laws. And Ron's already taken advantage of it. It's a tremendous advantage for the states. Most of them are doing it. Actually, the blue states tend not to do it. Even a couple of them have, though. And I want to express my tremendous thanks to the state of Florida for embracing this opportunity and being a true partner. They've worked so well with the federal government. It's been just a beautiful, beautiful partnership. So, Ron, I'd like to thank you personally. You are my friend, and you'll always be my friend. And we may have some skirmishes even in the future. I doubt it, but I will always come back because we just we have blood that seems to match pretty well. We have a relationship that's been a very strong one for a long period of time, and I appreciate it, very much appreciate it.
That wasn't the only moment he took to praise Governor Ron DeSantis, who at one time was his political foe. You remember in 2024 when Ron DeSantis entered the primary, much to the chagrin of a lot of Republicans, Donald Trump, and a lot of Floridians as well, who just reelected him as governor. And the nicknames started to fly, Meatball Ron, et cetera, et cetera. But Donald Trump says, look, Ron and I, we are great. We are back in action.
How would you describe the relationship, and what future does Governor DeSantis have?
I think it's a 10. Maybe 9-9, because there might be a couple of little wounds. So maybe it's not 9. I think we have a 10. We get along great.
Yeah, it could be, we could be witnessing Ron reborn, the rebirth of DeSantis, the phoenix rising from the ashes, and Alligator Alcatraz could be a big reason why that's happening. There is so much more as the Senate passes this one big beautiful bill off to the House of Representatives. There's so much more that we need to cover, and we will cover, and we're going to do it in our second daily podcast today. Every single day there's 2 podcasts, not 1 but 2, because 2 podcasts are better than 1. And we'll delve into exactly what happened in the Senate. We'll delve into exactly what has to happen in the House of Representatives for them to meet their deadline. We're going to bring you more of the news and more commentary and more information that you need to know. And we do it every single day on Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. There's 2 ways to listen. You can watch us live as we live stream at 1 p.m. Eastern, or you can go to your favorite podcast platform, iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio, wherever it is. You can download the podcast, listen, and enjoy.